will be the Prime Minister for the government team. And next to me here is Velofe, and she is the Deputy Prime Minister. And over here we have is the third speaker, Audrey, as our government whip. Now, at its core, this debate is concerns or raises the question on whether or not the company are able to make sure that the workers are able to live up to a higher standard, or whether we want to prioritize the wellness of these workers or these big companies, or those who big companies on which one whether we should prioritize. Now, for definitions itself, we like to define high-level individual contributors as those who are able to offer high standards of quality for their work. If they're able to advance further, those are the definition of high-level individual contributors. Now, for our argument itself, we would like to start with pushing the standards. By allowing the shift in ambition, we are allowing the workers to have a higher level of standards and allowing them to actually reach out to learn for a higher degree of work, higher degree of education. By pushing the standards, it motivates the workers to reach that ambition and allowing them to...
Are you saying that manager... Okay.
Defined. It allows them to acknowledge on whether or not what they are working for is the right thing, and they are able to reach out their ambition. Now, next we have is allowing them to have control in their work environment. By changing the shift into individual contributors, we are allowing them to pick and explore, giving them the choices to contribute independently instead of just following orders, instead of making orders, instead of just creating a work environment where it is mostly just listening and instructions. Now, these all give us two benefits, which is our second argument. It all gives economic benefits and social benefits. It motivates the workers to work, which makes them contribute more, which allows them to innovate. And with that contribution, it allows the company to actually grow. And for the social benefits, they are able to explore more clearly and freely, and it creates a better working condition. It erases the gap between managerial roles and the normal working workers. It erases the gap which allows them to actually work freely and collaborate with each other instead of having this ice between them. Now, you guys, the opponents may say that this creates individualism, but actually when we analyze deeply, we realize that these things happen in both, in managerial roles and of course individual contributors. For example, people in managerial roles can sabotage their colleagues in their work. They may say that the work that their colleagues submitted is actually theirs and they get all the glory from it. And because of that, we can say that individualism also happens in managerial roles and many more. Imagine a world where people aimlessly work on their companies, annihilated by their own work. They aren't able to fully work or collaborate with their team members. And we, the government team, is providing a stance on when we are able to feel more closer with our work, where we are able to become more productive, and which concludes that by this shift of the mission, it allows us to push the standards of working. It actually allows the workers to grow independently with others and create a better working environment, erasing the ice and allowing us to become more innovative and allowing us to become more connected. That is all.
Okay, thank you Prime Minister for that speech. Now to open the case coming from opposition, calling Leader of Opposition. Hear, hear.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Alright. Wait. I wanna set my timer first. Okay. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels. In a world where more workers want to remain experts in their field instead of becoming managers, many people celebrate this trend as progress. They argue that workers should focus on developing technical skills rather than taking leadership responsibility. Now, why does this matter? Because this debate is not simply about whether individuals' contributors are valuable. Yes, they are. Rather, it is about growing shift in ambition away from management and toward individual contributor roles. The ambition people pursue shape the future of companies, institutions, and entire industry. Every successful workplace depends not only on skilled specialists but also on capable leaders. Managers coordinate teams, like resolve conflicts, set direction, and make critical decisions that individual contributors cannot make alone. So proud to oppose. Under the status quo, workers already have a meaningful choice. Those who prefer technical or specialist roles can remain individual contributors, while those who wish to lead can pursue management. This balance ensures that organization benefits from both expertise and leadership. Even under the status quo, people suffer because of burnout, and because of that, we don't shift it, but we actually fix it. The proposition believes that this balance is no longer desirable because they see too many people pursuing management and want society to support a shift in ambition toward becoming high-level individual contributors instead. In other words, they're like supporting ICS and they are encouraging workers to move away from managerial aspirations. Okay, engaging with the government when they say one economic benefit, which will make it a motivation. Government says I see shift increases motivation and productivity. My response is you don't need to reduce managers to improve skills or standards because both ICS and managers can be improved in the current system, and not everyone is more motivated as an ICS people. As an ICS, many people are motivated by leadership roles, and if we push everyone towards ICS, we lose motivation for the management, which is crucial and for coordination and productivity. So overall, productivity may fall because good work also needs good leadership, not just motivated individuals. 2, social benefit, freedom to explore. Government says IC shift gives people more freedom. This is my rebuttal, where people already have freedom to choose IC or management today. This motion doesn't add freedom. It pushes people toward one path. That creates pressure against management, making career choices less balanced. So real freedom is keeping both IC and management equally valid options. In our world, individuals contributors already play a crucial role in organizations. Software engineers, researchers, designers, and like doctors and many specialists can choose to remain in technical roles and continue advancing their expertise without becoming managers. They are valued, well compensated, and often significant influence within their field. However, their existence is a balance with like a steady pipeline of workers who aspire to management, ensuring the organization have both expertise and strong leadership. As the opposition, we reject this shift. While individual contributors are important, organization cannot function without a strong pipeline of future leaders. Encouraging workers to turn away from like management risk creating leadership shortage, weakening coordination, and harming the long-term success of organization. This debate is not simply about whether individual contributors are valuable, of course they are, whether it is about growing shift in ambition away from management and toward individual contributors' roles. Our goal is to compare whether managers or individual contributors are more valuable. Both are important. Instead, we must evaluate whether society should encourage a shift in ambition away from leader roles and whether the consequence of that shift organization and workers better off. To prove that our burden here is to prove that encouraging a shift in ambition away from manager roles and toward high-level ICS roles create more harm than benefit, and that maintaining the current balance between managers and ICS is actually more preferable. So the world works best when no, thank you. The world works best when there's a balance between experts and leaders, and that actively pushing workers away from management disturbs that balance. Okay. Our first argument is that fixed management don't abandon it. The claim here is that the problems proposition identifies with manager roles are real, but the solution is to improve those roles, not to encourage workers to move away from them. And here's my explanation for it. Okay, the reason many workers do not want to become managers is often because management can be stressful. Managers face long hours, pressure from senior leadership, responsibility for team and performance, and like the burden of handling conflicts and administrative tasks which can like lead into burnout. However, these problems are not caused by management itself. They are caused by poor workplace structures and bad management systems. If managers are overworked, unsupported, or poorly rewarded, the correct responses is to improve training, provide better support, reduce unnecessary administrative work, and ensures managers are properly compensated. What proposition does is similar to seeing a problem and walking away from it rather than solving it. Instead of asking why managerial roles have become less attractive and fixing those issues, they encourage workers to avoid management altogether. So this creates like a very dangerous this creates a dangerous cycle. The fewer talented people who enter management, the worse management becomes. So organizations are then left with fewer capable leaders, making managerial roles even more stressful and less attractive. Before I continue, is there any POI? 3, 2, 1. Okay, no. Let's go to the impact. The root causes of dissatisfaction with management remains unsolved here, and then the organization loses talent, potential leaders, and then management quality declines because fewer capable people enter these roles, and then future worker face even worse leadership and workplace conditions. So why is our world is actually much more better? In our world, we keep both pathways open while improving managerial positions. Workers who generally prefer technical work can still become ICS, but we also make leadership roles more sustainable and actually like more attractive. So this solves the actual problem without sacrificing the leadership organization need. Proposition treats management as the problem. We believe poor management conditions are the problem. If a role is broken, the answer is to fix it and convince people to stop doing it. I am from the opposition team, Proto Opus.
Okay, thank you, Leader of Opposition, for that speech. Now to continue the case coming from Proposition calling Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Check. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, I'll begin my speech in 1, 2, 3. Honorable adjudicators, my valued opponents, and of course my valuable teammates. Today I stand here as the Deputy Prime Minister of the proposition on the motion of why we support the shaping workers' ambition from pursuing managerial roles to high-level individual contributors. First, as the Deputy Prime Minister, I will be first explaining the framing of our argument, the framing of this entire debate, which seems to have gone a bit of astray from the opposition's arguments. I will be rebuttaling the misconstrued claims made by the opposition, and they are very definitive claims about the motion, as well as expand our arguments. And I will concretely prove why the significance of our arguments matter more to society and offers much more benefits and magnitude to society. And then at the end, I'll be summarizing what exactly we have done throughout our speeches as the proposition. Okay, well, first, there was previously an idea pushed by opposition that what the proposition is doing here is rejecting that managerial roles can also offer benefits or offer valuables, so that we're trying to sacrifice managerial roles. No, that is not what we're trying to do. We support the shift in workers' ambition, as in the rise in workers wanting to pursue being high-level individual contributors as a career, because we believe that can prove to push for a higher degree of quality even further, not just contributing as a leader, because there is a lot of significance that workers can do as individual contributors, not just having a managerial role. We believe that the best kind of work that pushes more motivation is the type of work that gets acknowledged based on your individual work and your individual contribution to the company. So we believe that people would be much more motivated if their work and the quality of their work is not defined by the group that they are managing, but as what they can productively contribute to their company. Also, we have yet to see an actual definitive explanation for the magnitude of why exactly the opposition opposes the shift in workers' ambition from pursuing managerial roles into high-level individual contributors. We have yet to see a definitive alternative, or why exactly they think that the shift in workers' ambition to become high-level individual contributors is a bad thing. And then they have yet to tie in together the entirety of the big picture within the impacts of what they're arguing for to society economically, like materially economically, as well as socially. And now I'll be going into our arguments. So we believe in the proposition, we believe that the shift in ambition into becoming high-level individual contributors should be supported because it allows more innovative benefits to individuals and society. First, it offers benefits to people economically and politically. Because let's look at the status quo here. A lot of times within a capitalistic world dominated by big corporations, workers don't have much control. Even people in managerial roles don't have much control over their work environment. And they actually face much more alienation, not in the social sense, but alienation from their work. And they feel they have less of a creative stake within their work. This actually leads to demotivation and thus a lower quality of work and what they are producing, which affects society as a whole. Because let's look at, for example, a more tangible example, like a chef, an executive chef who, for some reason, he's feeling very demotivated in his work. Why? Because his work and the productivity of his work is defined by the chefs that he manages, right? Even though he's a very good worker and he's a very good chef, because a lot of the workers that he manages are, we could say, less capable than him, people view the restaurant or him specifically as being incapable. And this demotivates him to work less harder actually, and to feel that his work is not being acknowledged enough. That's what we're saying when this actually leads people to become demotivated. What we are advocating for, my honorable adjudicators, is not only better working conditions for workers because being a high-level individual contributor allowed them to have more freedom in how they work without feeling the burden of having a responsibility towards one team and feeling more of a burden to having to be loyal and stay there in the miserable working conditions they have, and instead feel more freedom to explore how they work, pushing for more innovation because they feel their work can be more acknowledged. If workers have more creative liberties and control over how they work, and because they're high level, which suggests that companies would want them and have a higher demand for them because of their productive work. This pushes for more motivation for them to work and more innovation. Thus, they're going to work harder, produce higher quality work and what they're producing because of this level of acknowledgement that they receive as individuals. What we want here is for workers to contribute actively and productively while securing working conditions to actually enjoy their work, not having their work defined by the team that they're managing or feeling like a sense of burden to only stay within this one company because they have a team that they have to manage there. Our second argument is that this makes society more productive and actually protects vulnerable identities. For example, the status quo currently is that a lot of people that you accepted.
Are you gonna prove they're just going to instantly enjoy their jobs as an ICs?
Instantly enjoy their jobs. Okay, so the likelihood of a worker to be able to enjoy their jobs further when they feel they have more control over their work and instead of feeling the burden of having their work defined by the people that they manage, because there's a lot of indistinct variables and uncontrollable variables that you face when you are managing a team. And if something goes wrong there, that defines your entire career and your entire profile in the company. So if you don't have that, and instead you are a high-level contributor, you feel there's more creative liberties to take. And you will obviously enjoy your job more when you feel your work is actively being acknowledged and actually has a material impact on the company. You feel that there's an actual creative stake that you have, and there's less of an alienation from you and your work, because you are now more attached to that work because you know you're going to be acknowledged by that work individually instead of being defined as the group as a whole, because there are variables you cannot control. So the likelihood of what we are arguing is much more significant than what the opposition is trying to push for. Okay, let's explain just why this protects vulnerable identities. In a group setting, as we've said before, there's a lot of variables that you cannot control, and group settings can often be very toxic. So often, not only are these managers living with a low level of wages with high level of stress, they're also facing the pressure to work with individuals that may not agree with them personally, or even endanger them, or feel that they're working in an oppressive environment, and that adds to the pressure and lessens their enjoyment of work. So what we're pushing for is more security and more productive work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for that speech. Now to continue the case coming from opposition, calling Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Hold on, I'm setting my timer. Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. 3 points I'm going to deliver: first, clarification; second, rebuttals; and lastly, my argument. Starting with my clarification. Firstly, I want to clarify on how people's interest to hop on into ICs and status quo. So basically, there are people who's smart and okay. So yeah, people are stressed to do a job like the managerial roles, who's has a big responsibility towards many amount of people in the companies, right? And they don't want that, so therefore they have the interest to opt in into ICs, who doesn't have to control that many amounts of people. They do not have those many amount of people to responsibility towards that, and therefore yeah, that's why people want to opt into ICs. Okay, but then because ICs work individual, but then secondly, how does this look in both sides? So A, under government, people will likely shift into ICs roles, and but then B, under opposition, both of the roles will likely become stable, sustainable, because we're protecting both of the roles, because we're concerned about both roles is actually very important in the working industrial atmosphere. Yeah, but then under government, this will likely create a managerial crisis, because this is connecting towards my rebuttals, because 2 points. First, they're stating that they're not sacrificing on the managerial roles because panels. However, I think they're just being delusional about this, because however, if you want to increase something, then of course we need to sacrifice something. So therefore, you cannot just increase the IC's role without sacrificing the managerial role. So therefore, it's not that realistic, that statement that delivered by them. Then secondly, they stated about how it offers benefits, and therefore in our side, it will lead many people to the motivation of working, so you're not being appreciated or something. Then panels, I think it's not going to be that easy to be that demotivated, because of course those managerial roles will get a trade off for their sacrifice, such as yes.
How can you prove that the shift, as mentioned in the motion, actually sacrifices managerial roles? Because the shift doesn't mean that everyone is going to sacrifice or no longer have the desire to become a manager. Everyone in society. Thank you.
Okay, so basically, because you're pursuing, you're supporting the pursuing towards the society, then of course for the long term, people will eventually look into ICs more, because your side is basically glorification the IC's role, of course, and it's of course going to affect the society's mindset, perspective towards IC and manager roles for the long term, and therefore we've already proved to you on how you are sacrificing those manager roles. Then secondly, continuing my rebuttals, I think it's not going to be that easy to be that demotivated, because they get a trade off for their sacrifice, such as their paycheck, tackling this with an appreciation from their boss, because hey, you worked great, okay, but then etc. So basically the government just simplification. It's not that easy to be that demotivated. But then lastly, moving on to my argument, I have one argument, which is whether or not this will be good for the work industry and the stakeholders inside of it. So a world where everyone shifting their ambition into becoming ICs rather than managerial roles is actually not good for the long-term effectiveness, either for the company or the people inside of it. But before that, opposition clearly understand regarding on how in the status quo that managerial roles is exhausting sometimes, because you have the responsibility for many stakeholders. But then imagine when everyone's literally supporting workers' ambition, pursuing them, such as hey, if I were you, I'd rather become ICs rather than those managerial roles that you got offered, because yeah, I work in individuals. It's more simple. I get higher paycheck, etc., etc. I think simple things like this is not good for the long term. 3 layers of argument will explain why. First, this will give unnecessary internal problems towards the individuals themselves. And this is engaging towards their answers towards my PI, which is they will instantly enjoy their jobs. But I think though, because panels notice how on the interest of people moving into IC's roles, because they want to avoid those big responsibilities. So I think but I think I've already explained characterization regarding on how characteristics of people who's becoming a manager or IC is often people whose good legitimacy is stated by my PM, because they see them as a smart people that can handle the responsibilities. Here's the comparison. In managerial roles, I know that the managerial roles we can get many risks or many harms to, e.g. freshers, because you have to handle many people, the responsibility that you have towards many people, etc. But hey, at least the way you contribute and have responsibility for many amount of people is actually more meaningful in terms of amount, the way you socialize with people more often, how you give them coordinations, what to do, etc. And yeah, it's going to be like meaningful rather than becoming an IC, because we in IC's role, I know that ICs have a good benefits. Okay, we're concerned about what you feel. Like if you do something good, then everyone will directly know that it was you who did it. You don't have to handle that much of amount of people, etc. But then notice on how society's perspective towards ICs is mostly like, okay,
how has the opposition actually guaranteed or provided a tangible model of how becoming or the shift instead towards managerial roles can actually materially provide benefits to the economy?
okay, so basically, because we're making both of the roles stable, because we're concerned about like both roles is actually very important. Okay, continuing to my argument, there is how and how the society perspective towards IT is mostly there are smart people who can handle their jobs. This will likely give unrealistic expectations to always do good. And notice how the government never mentioned about this, giving them unnecessary pressure because it's either fulfilling those unnecessary expectations or otherwise you'll get judged. This is actually very harmful towards the IC's individuals for the long term. And there are problems like this can give them like stress, mental illness, etc. Not only that, notice how ICs actually going to last meetings and they got like interactions with people, which will make their internal problems worse, which is the worst case. And even in their best case, like being appreciated directly, get noticed, high paycheck, etc. But eventually it'll be overshadowed by the worst case anyway. And therefore, we've already proved to you on why the way they're trying to glorify ICs is actually not relevant anymore. Then secondly, here, the shifting workers' ambition from pursuing managerial roles will likely create an imbalanced work atmosphere. And this is engaging towards the argument with struggling about productivity. So imagine when everyone literally willing to be ICs because their perspective towards managerial roles is like, oh, managerial roles is like very stressful, etc. I mean, this cannot be supported because panels, the way government tries to validate this mindset, is actually very delusional because this can lead towards many people obtaining this narrative and leading into managerial crisis. And when this managerial crisis has already happened, who's going to coordinate the stakeholders in this inside the company? Wouldn't the work as much theory because like they become like very complex chaos? I don't know why they never mentioned regarding on how manager roles is actually very needed and important, especially in the work industry. Logically, we don't want this to happen, and that's why rather than pursuing them into something that's not good for the long term, but rather fix the root problem, which is by fixing the society's mindset or perspective towards managerial roles, because the shifting clearly happens when people's perspective towards managerial roles is bad. But then how do we fix their mindset? By educating them regarding how important managerial role is, how meaningful their contribution, and how it's good for the long term, giving them support, etc. So if the society declines the saying that both managerial ICs is important, and therefore we need to make both of them sustainable to make it stable, not decreasing the other ones, then yes, lastly, third layer, if we compare this innovative debate, then of course we win in terms of magnitude because we affect much more people, and we win in terms of long term because managerial roles and both sides, what role is actually very important. Yeah, therefore that's why our side is more sustainable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition, for that speech. Now to close the case coming from proposition calling the government, calling the proposition whip. Here.
Okay, sorry, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Honorable judges as well as my fellow debaters, the opposition team has repeatedly misunderstood the fact that what we're arguing for here as the government team is not to disregard or entirely dismiss the importance of leaders and managerial roles themselves, but instead what we are arguing for is a shift so that ambitions of workers can be more so directed towards becoming ICs instead of mere managerial positions. And of course, we recognize that it is important for some level of leadership to be involved within companies. However, of course, because leadership roles are very much limited, because of this limitation in quantity, it means that we need to shift the ambition of workers towards ICs. And so because of this, I would like to provide our first clash within this debate. Namely, the fact that we have argued repeatedly about the necessity of such a shift from the ambition of workers from becoming mere managerial positions into instead becoming ICs. As we have already repeatedly mentioned, the problem with leadership roles is that they're limited in quantity. And then aside from that, they also have their own negative impacts. This is something that the opposition team has not fully recognized. And through pursuing the ambition of workers to become leaders and managerial positions in a more exclusive way, it actually has more negative impact. For example, it pushes the perspective to be instead on a merely hierarchical perspective and not on the merit of the workers themselves, as we have already mentioned within our arguments by our past speakers, that through shifting this ambition, it will actually lead to a better assessment in a more objective way of the workers' merits themselves. We do not assess them simply based off of their loyalty towards the company or how long they've been working in a certain company or the height of their position within the company's hierarchy, but instead we're pushing to recognize the merit of the work itself. And because of this, we're also minimizing any kind of personal relation to the company and instead assessing them in a more objective way. Aside from that, we have also mentioned that there are a lot more benefits within shifting this ambition from leadership to instead ICs instead. And this provides our second clash within this debate, namely the fact that we argue about the effectiveness of shifting this ambition itself. However, the government team has repeatedly already stated our benefits and the benefits within both economic sector as well as the social sector that the opposition team has failed to account for and respond to. For example, we have stated how through allowing more control, more personal autonomy, more personal choice of the workers to choose to be ICs, this provides economic benefit because they may feel more motivated and more of a personal stake within the work that they are doing themselves. And this will rejected, and this will of course lead to more economic benefit. And while the opposition team has mentioned that another form of motivation can be to achieve managerial roles, we also must recognize that this only works in the short term, because without any kind of personal stake, without any personal passion or interest within the work that they are doing, focus merely on the position of these workers itself will lead to burnout in the long term and to not being able to achieve any genuine benefit, any genuine long-term enjoyment within their work itself, and this will lead to lower economic progress in the long term. Secondly, we have also mentioned that economically it has provided more innovation, and this means that since they have more of a personal stake within their work, they have more of a personal reason to create new things that actually push the economy forward. Secondly, we have mentioned that through having more personal control and autonomy and choice within their work, ICs will also have an increased quality of life. They will enjoy their work more, they will enjoy their careers more, which of course will lead to a better quality of life in terms of the social conditions of the world. Secondly, we have mentioned also that through shifting the ambition towards ICs instead of mere managerial positions, it motivates these people to work harder within their academics, within their schools. Because again, these ICs are again high-level ICs, and this means that they must be assessed based off more so their merit and their actual contribution that they can provide towards the company. And this means that they must achieve higher level in terms of their academics, their school, their education, and will push them to contribute. Yes? Sorry? Yeah?
Okay, isn't autonomy also possible in well-designed management roles?
Well, we believe that it actually is. It actually has more control for them to be able to choose to be ICs instead of managerial positions, because as we already stated, when we are prioritizing their ambition to become ICs instead, what we're prioritizing here is their ability to choose according to their own will where they want to work, what jobs they want to work, and of course their own contribution instead of simply achieving managerial positions. Now, allow me to continue according to our clashes. And so aside from simply the effectiveness of the government team's arguments, we've also showed that it's actually much more fair for there to be a shift from these ambitions to be managerial positions and instead focus them into becoming ICs instead. And the reason why is, as we have already mentioned, there is a chance, there's very much a plausibility and a likelihood that by focusing merely on these leadership positions or managerial roles, the assessment will not be completely based off the merit and will actually be biased or unfair and more so focus on the hierarchical positions within the company itself and not actual the work that and contribution that is being given by the workers themselves. And so we as the government team believe that we have firmly won this debate because, as we have already shown through our main clashes, we have shown that what we are arguing for here is not simply to disregard the role of leaders at all, but we're showing that shifting the ambition from leadership or managerial roles into ICs instead is actually very important and beneficial. We have also showed that in the current world right now, the problem is the limitation in the quantity of these leadership or managerial roles. And because of that, what we are advocating for is the shift of this ambition from leadership roles or managerial roles to instead ICs instead. We have also showed how it's actually much more effective in the sense that it provides economic as well as social benefits towards the whole of society as well as the individual themselves to focus on becoming ICs instead of managerial roles. We have shown how this functions in the long term instead of simply functioning in the short term. These benefits are benefits that cannot be achieved or accounted for by the opposition team's world, where we simply focus on pursuing leadership roles or even a balance between ICs and leadership roles, where no amount of the same kind of benefit can be achieved as we can achieve in the world where we shift this ambition from managerial roles to instead ICs instead. And lastly, we have also shown that through the metric of fairness, it is clear that shifting this ambition from leadership roles or managerial roles to ICs actually provides a more objective assessment of the workers themselves based off their merit, not simply their position or their place within the workers' hierarchy. And so again, we are proud to propose this motion that we support the shift in workers' ambition from pursuing managerial roles to becoming high-level individual contributors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Proposition Whip, for that speech. Now, to continue the case coming from opposition, calling Opposition Whip. Hear, hear.
Audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Wait, let me set my timer. 7:15 or 7:20?
It's 7:15.
Oh damn. My god, mi kagok habis 8:20 jadi 7:15. Sorry. Okay. Starting the speech in 3, 2, 1. Their whip tried to tell you on how they want to shift the ambition of workers like they can shift from managerial role to ICs, but they also tried to tell you in the same speech that they still want people to become managerial roles. Notice how their stance is very inconsistent, their very half stance at the very first state. That's why they shouldn't win so patopos. I would like to clarify on how their biggest concern is that managerial roles is limited. We agree that managerial roles are limited, but that is not the reason to encourage people to shift away from management. Precisely because these positions are limited, we should want the best possible candidates competing for them, because managerial roles is like the people who are controlling so many people, right? They're the leaders of the leaders. Government's model changes the ambition of workers at the margin. It encourages some of the most capable leadership candidates to remain ICs instead of considering management. The result is not that managerial positions disappear. The result is that the quality of the applicant pool declines. Organizations still fill those positions, but from a smaller and potentially weaker pool of candidates. That has long-term consequences because leadership at the very first day quality affects hiring, like organizational culture or employee development. But comparatively on our side, exactly because the limited of managerial position becomes a strength. Let's buy that, sure. Because management remains an equally respected ambitions, organization can select leaders from the widest possible pool of talented workers. Competition our side can happen even more, which will raise the quality of the leaders that will become the leaders of this company. So then at the end of the day, in our side of the house, the best people become managers. In our side of the house, at the end of the day, it's the best decision for us. But yeah, let's engage to their model. They just want to push someone who wants for a manager. Okay, we agree, there will still be managers. The question is, who chooses to become one? The motion explicitly says that society supports the shift in ambition. That means society sends the signal that, hey, the more desirable, prestigious, and rewarding career path is becoming a high-level IC. This changes the composition of people entering management. Why does this matter? Because at the very first day, leadership is not a role that anyone can immediately perform well. Organizations want their highest performing employees, people with vision, etc., right, to eventually move into leadership because they are the most capable of improving terms in teams and institutions. But when society encourages those same people to remain ICs, many of the strongest like leadership candidates rationally decide to not enter management. So yes, managers still exist in their sort of the house. The difference is that the leadership talent pool in their sort of the house becomes weaker, but they try to tell you on how ICs are very high skilled, require a very high skill, therefore this motivates them to actually pursue higher education. This kills their own cases exactly because of it requires high skill. The fairness that they're trying to claim fails because now the barrier for entry for people to enter this field is going to be very high. Maybe some high skilled people are able to enter this field. The harm is two layer. Firstly, regarding the people who enter the ICs, I think that their society expects them to always be cool, always be good, since this field requires a very high skill, right? Therefore, society puts excessive expectation towards these people, leading to unnecessary pressure, like hey, you should always be perfect, etc. But secondly, for the people who cannot enter ICs, I think that this just simply harms them. Why? Because now they keep comparing themselves endlessly to the people who are able to enter these ICs, leading to like insecurity, exhaustion, or like overthinking, etc. But the biggest clash then, whether or not shifting away from this role will be more beneficial individual and for the company. What is the problem in the status quo? Okay, let's accept that many people opt out because of burnout, etc. This happens because of